Good morning, everyone. We are here for another interview session by AirLyft. And from this time, we have the project KILT Protocol, and we have Ingo. Ingo, thank you so much for being here with us today. And it's a pleasure to host you for this interview session by AirLyft. Could you just briefly introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for inviting me. Introducing myself, pretty easy. I'm a computer scientist. I'm from Germany, and I founded KILT Protocol like 4 years ago. Before that, I had a long life in industry, worked for big publishing companies, been the CTO there. Also have been an entrepreneur when I was younger in medical informatics. Quite a wild life around computer science.
Fantastic, Ingo, fantastic. I know you have. We've been obviously after you for a while now to get this interview started. So without wasting your time, because I know it's very precious, I'd love to commence with the interview questions. Should I start?
Of course, please go ahead.
Perfect. So we'll start with question number 1. What was the inspiration behind building KILT Protocol?
Yeah, this company was actually founded by me and industry partners together. And the idea of the industry partners was basically, we have no idea what blockchain is, but we want to be somehow in the space and we want to do something useful, please. So please do something useful with blockchain. Then we looked around what could actually be done useful on blockchain, which is also relevant for many industry, not just for the finance industry or so, but for the energy industry as well as the publishing industry, as well as basically anything. And we came around that the Web 2, which we have right now, has a huge problem around identity. The biggest problem actually is that that identity in the physical world normally belongs to the person, and in the digital world, in the Web 2, it belongs to a big American company. And this is something which puts the user in a worse position than it was in the physical world, and that shouldn't be. So this is one of the big problems. And we thought, hey, maybe this is solvable with blockchain, and we found, yes, it is. And then we looked at industry use cases, and we found that basically every single vertical in the industry needs identity for different types of things. Some needed to identify a user, some needed to identify a service, some needed to put identity to IoT devices. But you always have identity in everything. And as identity is broken in the Web 2, I think it was time to build something on blockchain which is fit for Web 3, and this is what KILT is.
Fantastic. So obviously it's all about preservation of one's own identity without, having to divulge all the details, but yet sort of present who he is and where he is.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Now moving to question number 2, Ingo. What has been the biggest challenge for you so far, and how did you overcome that challenge?
Well, I think there's many challenges when you are a startup in the blockchain ecosystem. Like every startup, you need to find money and stuff like that. I think that's normal. What is particularly changed something in identity and on a blockchain is that you have some kind of a regulatory environment, and this regulatory environment is different in every single country. And it is very relevant for you in the country where you live in, because you have your company there and you have to obey the rights, the duties that you have from the regulatory side. And I didn't expect it to be that big, actually. So it was we spent far more money on lawyers than we actually planned to. So that was a very big surprise to me how complicated it actually is. Not because the people are against blockchain. It's not blaming anyone. It's just because it is so new and it's so different, and there's so little regulation actually which you can rely on, because but there's always people saying, yeah, we're working on this. Yeah, but how long can I wait until you're ready when you're working on it, basically? So that's really challenging.
Got it. Understood. Yes, obviously in a startup, in any sort of situation, the challenges are ongoing. Definitely, I can relate to that. Question number 3. we got to know that the team has a philosopher as well. Any interesting reason why?
Yes, definitely. So in the beginning, we made a big research phase. So we didn't start like, hey, let's make identity. Identity is something which is there for thousands of years. And there have been different concepts about that. And the physical world has a different concept than the digital world, and there's differences and lots of things you have to think about. So we said when we started the company, let's take like 10 months and really dig down into everything that identity is. And therefore we had a very, I would say, colorful team of different people from starting from mathematicians to computer scientists, economists, and also a philosopher, because it has to do a lot with philosophy in the end. You could say then after 10 months, we could actually fire the philosopher. We didn't, because it turned out that he's one of the best developers that we have, because he's so bright that he can also do the developer work without even...
Fantastic.
So he's still here.
That's excellent. That's quite interesting turn of events, to have a person with a dual skill set. That's fantastic. Perfect. Moving on to question number 4. Does KILT plan to partner with the regional government for storing the identity of citizens?
Actually, when we started the whole thing, we were thinking of that. And then we also started speaking with governments. And then it turned out we were on the wrong way. And so we're not doing it anymore. So why not? Because we found out that digital identity is something that sounds frightening to governments, because it is not, but they just really find it hard to understand that in the physical world, they are just one trusted entity which issues credentials. They are not the master of my identity, right? My identifier is my face, for example. It's not being given to me by the government, but I can take a picture of my face and then I can put it on some kind of passport, and then this passport is issued by a government. So they are just a trusted entity. They're issuing something. And then when I go to university and get a diploma for that, then I get it from the university and not from the government. So they are just one of many issuers. And in the physical, in the digital world with verifiable credentials and decentralized identity, it will be the same thing. So they're not losing anything compared to what they had before in the physical world. But it sounds to them often like, hey, we make digital identity. Yeah, then all the information which is now at Facebook and Google should be in the government. And basically it shouldn't. I can tell you, but this is what governments are always looking for, and so it's really a complicated discussion because they get it from the wrong side and they think we are working against them. Actually, we're just providing an infrastructure for them. But hey, I think it will take some time until governments are ready to do this. And when will be that time? I think the digital identity is going to start off in the tech space. So for the blockchain people, it's much easier to understand. For the it's much easier to understand. Also for internal and for companies, for big companies, even using identity of their employees internally is much easier to understand such a concept. And so what I think will happen is that digital identity comes from blockchain to gamers to the whole metaverse thing. And when it's established in the whole metaverse thing, then you will then governments will notice, wow, there's a lot of things happening in this parallel universe there.
That's when the transition happens, I guess.
And they will join, right? So we took it from completely wrong side in the beginning and wasted a lot of time on that, speaking with a lot of governments about that. And they all were very reluctant to play with us. And now we notice that it's just going to happen like the internet. The internet wasn't interesting for governments in the beginning, but now they're using it. So it will take some time and it will go bottom up and not top down.
No, makes sense. Absolutely. At the end of the road, definitely they will see a way to get into it once they have a proper understanding, naturally. Perfect. Moving to the next question. Why did you select Polkadot for KILT?
Yeah, so the first when we started, when we were finished with a white paper and had made our studies on identity, then we said, okay, now we have to implement the whole thing. Of course, you think of Ethereum and things like that in the first place because it's also established. And then we noticed actually identity transactions have to be very, very cheap because Yeah, because when you add an identity to an IoT device, which costs like $2, it is really hard to pay transaction fees like $100 for recording the identity. That wouldn't work, right? So it needs to be cheaper, and it needs to be in a way that the network basically can be in control of the gas cost, at least for a major part of that. And so we were looking for something else, and we were definitely deciding that we need to have our own blockchains, that we can't just be a smart on somebody else's blockchain. And there were not too many frameworks out there with which you could build your own blockchain. And one of them was Parity Substrate, which is the thing where Polkadot is based on. And we looked at it, and we were absolutely blown away by the ideas behind that, and said, okay, this is the technology of the future, and now is the right time to jump on this thing, even if it's not almost, by that time it wasn't really ready. And so we paid a lot for for making things again, because stuff changed, but in the end it was the totally right direction, and it gives us such a lot of power and flexibility to build on a software which is developed by so brilliant minds. It's absolutely fantastic. And the other thing which we didn't plan, but which also we found out, is that there's actually a very, very good community around Polkadot. The people in there are extremely intelligent. There's great projects in there, and working together with those guys is so much fun. So you could say we came for the technology and we stayed for the community, basically.
That's fantastic. I think nothing better than that, obviously enjoying the people that you work with, and obviously Polkadot has a great community that we've seen. Perfect. Can you explain what is social KYC, and why and how would someone, a normal user, use it?
Yeah, social KYC was intended in the beginning as a demo use case, basically for what KILT can do, but it turns out that it is actually very, very useful for people. Social KYC, so everyone knows what KYC is. This is you take your governmental documentation, and then you wave a little bit, and then you move your head and stuff like that, and then somebody says, "Yep, this is Ingo." And so I think this is necessary if financial transactions are involved, and I think it won't go away, because banks will always be connected to governmental things, and it's okay like that. And it's really nice if somebody runs away with my money, that I really find out who this is, and then that I can go to the police and say, hey, this guy actually ran away with my money, please find him. But there's other use cases in the internet, and there's a lot of them. So for example, when you play a video game with some guy in China, and you really want to know that you're playing to the right guy, right? It really doesn't help if you know his street address and have some governmental thingy that describes who that is, because if he cheats you in the game, you can't go to the Chinese police and say, hey, he cheated me on the game, please find him and arrest him. That wouldn't work. But if you know who this person is on the internet, then you can actually go to Twitter and go to email and go to Discord and many other things and say, hey, be aware of this person. This person is actually cheating you. And this is why we said you need another KYC in the internet. And this is determined by proving your control over social media accounts. So what social KYC does is you go to social KYC and say, I'm Ingo Rübe at Twitter. And then social KYC tells you, okay, if you think you are Ingo Rübe at Twitter, then please tweet this sentence with your account. And then social KYC looks at this, looks at Twitter and sees if you really tweeted this. And if you really tweeted this, you obviously control this account. And then it issues you a credential, which says you are basically owning this Twitter account. And you can use this credential for whatever you want. For example, you can go to a video game or whatever and tell this video game, actually, this is me. And then you play with know that this is you. And if you're cheating, they can actually say, okay, this guy on Twitter, this guy on Discord, which is the same person, is actually cheating in the video game. So you identify yourself with things outside the government, right? So you have a new way of identifying yourself and making sure who persons actually are. And this is very valuable in the internet because lots of things in the internet are not happening with the real names. They're happening with addresses in social media.
Understood. Understood. Definitely, I think it's a need for the hour for sure. Definitely. Thank you for explaining it so well. You can definitely see a lot of scams happening online, you know, when online gaming and stuff like that. I can completely relate to that. Now, can apps implement login via KILT, just like login via Google?
Yes, they can. They would use probably social KYC credentials or even credentials from governmental KYC providers. That's also possible. And you would, and the communication would be a little bit different. So you wouldn't ask a central service like Google or so to provide your identity. You would ask the user, and the user would see his wallet popping up saying, this service is requesting this and this credential from you, maybe 2 or 3 credentials, so that the service can be really sure that you are you and you haven't been hacked, because you can hack an email, but hack Twitter, email, and Discord at the same time, complicated. So it could ask for 3 credentials or so, and you sign them once, and then your wallet sends over the credentials to the service, and you're logged in.
Understood.
And this has really interesting features for it, because the service does not really need to store those credentials, just has to make sure that those credentials are valid. And this can be checked on the blockchain that they are valid, right? So the service itself doesn't really need to store any information about the user, which gives it the possibility to be totally GDPR compliant, for example, because no personal information is stored in the service at all. It is always only stored with the user in his own wallet.
Got it. You got it. Now, as an end user, how do I start benefiting from or using KILT?
Yeah, as an end user, you would probably just use services like Social KYC. We launched another service just the other week, which is called DidSign, D-I-D, sign.io, if you want to look it up, which is a signing application which runs directly in your browser, which is absolutely fantastic because you don't need any central services anymore. You can have confidential documents because you don't send them out. They're just signed on your browser, and then you sign them with your DID, which is in your wallet. And then you have a signature on this thing, actually stating that you signed this thing, that you signed the document. And you cannot only use documents for it, like you can do in many centralized applications. You can also use video files. You can sign music. You can sign everything that is basically digital with that. And then you can send away the signed file to a person which you want to deliver it to. And that could be via email, that could be via Discord, that could be via Telegram, you name it. So you can use any means of communication and transport your signed file. And the other side, the receiver, can make absolutely sure, with DidSign again, that you are the right person, because the receiver can see all the credentials which are attached to it. For example, your Telegram, your Twitter and your email account, so that you can make absolutely sure that you are the right person. So we're doing something for basically everyone out there, where you can see the advantages of Web3 right away, because you don't have the central service. You have more freedom in the means of communication. You have more freedom in selecting your type of document, and it is always free because it is just a website which runs in your browser. So there's nothing, no one you can pay for, right? And so I think these services, and I hope there will be hundreds of these services in the future, because people start building on KILT. These services will actually bring what we call the Web3 to the people's lives. And this is how you could actually start benefiting by using those services.
Excellent, excellent. That's very interesting, and definitely something that I will definitely look up for sure. I would love to read more about DidSign. I'll definitely look it up. Now, how does a developer start implementing KILT? What are their options? Could you just briefly summarize it for us?
Yeah, there's many options. So if you are a developer, the first website you probably want to look at is dev.kilt.io, which is the developer side. There you can actually find all the necessary information around how to use the SDK, a cookbook, how to build applications on KILT, how to build an attester, how to build a verifier, how to run your own nodes if you want. So all the information about that is there. Of course, it is also necessary that you have some kind of discussion group. So we don't want to leave you alone. So there's a Discord channel, and this Discord channel can be found on kilt.io basically. So all the social connections are on the site on the bottom. So Discord, I think, becomes more and more important. So this is what I want to what I want to point out, because you find like-minded people there, and so you can discuss your ideas on what to build. So maybe somebody's building the same thing. Hey, make a team out of it, or it's just inspiring other people, or you get help from other people. And the devs of the KILT team are definitely also there to help you out if you get stuck at some point. So that's probably also happening on Discord.
Great, great. That's super. Can you now explain the token utility of KILT?
Yeah, so the token utility of KILT, there's many of them.
I think this is the most eager one that everyone would want to know.
The smallest one is definitely that there's gas fees. Those gas fees are ridiculously low, so they don't really make a big business case, but they are there just as a spam protection. So disregard they are not important. Of course, there's staking. You can stake your KILT if you want, but yeah, that's a minor utility, I would say. A bigger utility of the coin is definitely deposits. So why would you need deposits? So on a blockchain, you know that storage is something which costs a lot because it has to be replicated thousands of times in the end. And this is what in many blockchains, what you pay for with the gas fee, right? And this is why the gas fees are so high. So when we want to have ridiculously low gas fees, we still have to make sure that people who write something on the blockchain actually care about what they write, and if they don't need it anymore, that they also delete it again. Right. So if you want a DID, for example, an on-chain DID, that can be quite long because there can be service endpoints in there, and this goes definitely if you really use everything that can be more than 1 or 2 kilobytes. So and this has to be replicated thousands of times and held for ever, basically. So how can you hold this in a database? So what we're doing here is that with KILT, you pay when you generate a DID. You don't pay a lot of KILTs for saving it, but you pay a deposit, which means that on your account, 2 KILT coins per DID are locked. They're not going away. They're not paid to anyone. No one can spend them. They're just locked. If you don't want your DID anymore because you decide, hey, I'm not interested in blockchain stuff anymore, you just delete your DID and your 2 KILT coins are unlocked. So this is the major utilities, I would say, for now. The same thing happens when you want to have a unique name associated to your DID. It also happens when you make an attestation and all that stuff. It's not always to KILT. It's for an attestation, it's 0.1 or something. But you always do those deposits, and this is what is making the KILT coin a scarce resource in the end, right? Because more and more, the more the system is used, the more of the KILT coins are actually locked away from transferability, because as long as they're locked, you can't send them to someone else.
Okay, got it. That's interesting. A lot of use cases definitely I see for KILT for sure. Now, the main thing, obviously, you have been super busy with building this about digital identity, dealing with governments and everything, social KYC, everything leading up to understanding about your project for our community members has been fantastic so far. Now, my main question and final last question for you, Ingo, is what is your cherry on top, where end vision for the project?
Oh, there's there's a huge vision which is which just came out of the research phase and which is now going into the implementation phase. And this is a big one, and I'm not promising it for the next 2 months. So this is not going to be ready before beginning of next year. So we have to be absolutely clear about that, because we can always tell great stories and then people are disappointed because why they're not. So the big thing which is coming up is VCO. This is called, this stands for virtual credential organizations. Virtual credential organizations are companies running on the KILT blockchain. Why do we need that? Because we think, or we see, that credentialing is a business which is really, really important also in the digital world, becomes more important in metaverses. So if you are in the metaverse, you want to build your house, you build your house with bricks, but those bricks are digital, but you want the best bricks, of course. So you need bricks which are certified. So you need a credential on this thing. You also need credentials on NFTs that people find them valuable or something like that. So credentialing is a huge thing. And this is not just for single persons. Credentialing is in the real world $1 trillion business, and it will be a huge business also in the digital world. So you will have companies. How do you form these companies? So we said, let's give a platform for building such companies directly on the blockchain, which can issue credentials. So it's a testing companies. They are pretty special, because you could say, yeah, I can use basically any DAO for that. So yes, you could use any DAO for that, but DAOs have problems when they want to interact with the real world, especially when they want to interact with companies, because a DAO can't send me an invoice, because a DAO is not living in a jurisdiction and it is not regulated, right? Which is nice in many cases, but in some cases, especially when you want to work together with big companies, this becomes a problem. And the VCOs are a configurable middleware for producing companies on blockchains, which means that you could, if you wanted to, even fit them into your regulation. No matter what regulation you have, you just have to parameterize it in a way so that your jurisdiction can actually say, yeah, this is actually a company that we can work with. It has a tax number, and if it makes so much money with building all those bricks, then hey, in the end, it has to pay tax. That might be interesting for some people, especially when they are from big companies, right? And this is why we built this. I sometimes call it like a DAO in a cage, right? So you can make a total DAO out of it, so just don't parameterize it. Then it works like a DAO, but you could also put those parameters in. And this is interesting for many builders, because many builders want to live in a world where they can interact also with real companies and write invoices.
Fantastic. And I'm pretty sure with a lot of big companies taking space in the metaverse, like Atari Gaming, Nike has got their headquarters, Adidas has started their headquarters as well. This is all going to be applicable there as well?
Yep. These are definitely, I wouldn't say these are companies we are working with. I would say these are companies we also intend to serve.
Got it.
Yeah, because you always, I think it's better to start small, actually. So we're working in this direction. We're working. I'd rather like to work with small companies in the beginning, who want to be in a regulated environment, and then go to the big ones after that, because all the metaverse stuff is so at the beginning right now that most of the people who are building for metaverses haven't even thought about the idea of identity in the metaverse. And for me, it's more important to first get this idea of digital identity inside the metaverse and not start at the complicated part. And now you have an identity, now you can make a company. Let's have the identity first and have the metaverse first, right? So let's build on the metaverse and then introduce identity, and then we start introducing stuff like the VCO. So this is all a long-term play, right? So nothing happens right away. Just technology isn't adopted just because it's beautiful. It takes a while until people have really understood. And what we're doing right now is small steps, like putting out the DID signer, for example. So didsign.io is a perfect example where people with no blockchain know-how can use blockchain for doing something that they do every day. This is beautiful, this is understandable, and then people start to understand, okay, digital ID actually doesn't have to be Google login or Facebook, right? It can be I own. And then it starts from there. And then people say, hey, in the metaverse, actually, it would be pretty dangerous if the big American companies already are there and take, again, my identity in the metaverse, because actually that's me. And people start thinking about that. So it's a process where we're talking about years and not like next month, everything is there.
No, perfectly. Completely agree with you. I think that brings us to our end of the interview. And I know you have a lot on your plate, Ingo. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ingo, for taking out your precious time and being with us on this interview session by AirLyft. And we definitely look forward to more crazy, innovative things by KILT Protocol.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the great questions and have a great day. Bye-bye.